Oh boy, missing persons by state. Alaska is the most, clearly. 42. Fuck off. Oh my God. Just because people just go up there and fucking vanish. Dr. Steve Brill, yeah, for your health. Let's check it out. Let's look at these statistics. Statistics are very important. Also, if you think about it, let's look at it for your health. Let's check it out. Yeah, don't fucking go anywhere in Alaska. You guys know about that serial killer in Alaska who like pick women up and fly them out in his plane and just fly over areas and dump them? Indigenous women, that's part of it. That's part of it. They, let's go to Oklahoma. Okay, missing people, 6.2, higher than Texas, higher than California, way higher than Kansas, like it's surrounding states. Like on Arkansas has more. So Arkansas, oh, this is a good point. Okay, so 62 and 65, 6.2 and 6.5. Let me show you something real quick. Like a little geography lesson, kids. Hang out. Let's get, let's see. U.S. map of native reservations. Okay. Map of Indian lands in the United States, U.S. Department. There. Okay. Then we got a journal here. Here we go. So, can we check this out? All right. So, remember what I showed you about? Where are we? Back here. Fuck you. Yeah. Okay. Missing persons by state. 6.2, 6.5, right around the top of Texas, right here. Okay. See that area? Remember that. Now, these are the native territories. Here it is. This is the edge of Arkansas. This is the edge of Missouri. This is Kansas. This is Oklahoma. Almost eastern Oklahoma region is almost entirely native land. Like Oklahoma is really just this. If you count the sovereign land versus the U.S. official U.S. land, this is fucking Oklahoma right here, out here. And so and this region, like they just, even the areas over here where they define like the northern, like the plains region. I want to scoop in even further on this. So pretty fascinating. Like there you go. Boop, boop, boop. So the eastern Oklahoma, there's the Osage right in here, the Pawnee Agency, the Chickasaw, the Onondarko, the Concho. This is Cherokee land. Like these are all areas, the Kickapoo, the Iowa Indians, Sac and Fox. Like this is all basically native land. This is technically, in large part, yeah, and it's a lot of it is empty, yes, but it's all native territory. So the people that go missing from there, they don't, half the time the locals don't report it, or if they do report it, it's taken as a missing, but they're treated like a foreign person who has gone missing. Like it's up to them, like they don't, the native territories don't have an FBI of their own, as it were. And if they go over the edge of this, they don't necessarily coordinate with the state agencies to see if they might be, they might be missing from here and listed as missing from here, but they're living here and they just don't care to go back. And so nobody in Arlington, Texas is talking to the, Okmulgee agency about where somebody might have gone missing from. And this person doesn't necessarily want to be found. So they have a lot of that going on there too. So that's one of the things, right? It's a huge swath. It's huge. And this is Oklahoma. For officially, like I would argue, Oklahoma is just this little chunk of shit right here, this little piece. Because this might be called the Eastern Oklahoma region, but that's native territory. So there's the Kickapoo traditional land over here. I don't know why in the Southern Plains they don't list it on here, but that's the. Let's see if I can find a better map of the native territory in here. This is an earlier Great Plains Basin. Okay, this is like kind of pre-area where people might have. And by the way, if you ever look at the map of like who's who and the Plains Indians and the Great Plains and the Basin Indians in the East and all that stuff, they fucking killed each other all the time. I mean, it's not that different from like the Germans and the Roman tribes and the Germanic tribes and fighting each other in Europe. Almost nothing different. You know, it was just everybody fighting over resources, and some people got increasingly cruel about it, and other people bandied, like once they aligned with the Spanish, they got horses from them. Horses are not indigenous to the United States at all, and so it was considered a huge leap forward to get and master the horse. And so tribes that got the horses wiped out the ones that didn't in short order, long before the East Coast was settled. It's fascinating stuff. I recommend people read about the Deerfield Massacre, because it's one of the reasons why there's a Deerfield in so many states, even though there's no there were no deer in that field. It's a fascinating read. Okay, here, I'll open this one up. Open this image in a new tab and we will look at it. Excellent. Okay, so I would argue, if you'll notice, Texas doesn't list theirs the same way, but everybody else does. So go back. This is that area I was talking about. Look at this area right here. See this? This bit right here. And then, of course, this little lip of it as well. Like, they don't consider like this part and this part to be the more of Oklahoma, sort of. So the Creek, Kickapoo, Comanche, Kiowa, and others are all kind of grouped in here. And the irony of that is fucking crazy, considering how the Comanche were to everybody. Yeah, up here is all these, like, these little lands. I think, for me, I think this stuff should be on every map. I think when you see a map of the United States and there's a reservation in a state, it should be missing from the map. It should be a blank spot in the map. Because it's sovereign territory. It is not a part of the state itself. Does that make sense? Because, you know, again, like, there's smaller ones up here, but there's a bunch of them up north, and this would be the, you know, the resettlements and that kind of stuff. But like this, the Navajo and Hopi areas and the Ute Indian areas that are around this area. Whoops, sorry, it's not on the, beg your pardon, down here. This is a huge chunk of ground. Fort Apache, and the Apaches, and the Taos, the Picaras, and the Paiute, all these. I feel like when you show a map of these states, you should just leave a hole where they are, because that's not, these little dots right here, this ain't California. All the rest of it's California, look like Swiss cheese, but that's true, right? Like, when's the last time you saw this chunk cut out of a map when you saw a map of New Mexico? Does that make sense? Or Arizona, for that matter. Or like Nevada with the Shoshone and the Walker River Paiute right here. Like, I just, like, even especially when we do like election maps, just leave a space there that's white that says this used to be, you know, this is not American land. Right? It isn't. That's just me. Like, I think that would make sense. I would present, like, when I run for president, what I will do is present a map of the United States that cuts out sovereign land because it's sovereign land, in the same way that we don't include chunks of Canada as part of our map, because it ain't. So people can get an idea of the size and the scope of the land that we actually govern and that we're responsible for, and then the areas that we have, you know, sovereign treaties with. I mean, for fuck's sake, look at South Dakota. One of the reasons why South Dakota's, you know, charting as well as it is, as far as crime and other stuff like that, is because they don't, look how much Sioux and Crow and Creek land is all throughout here that they don't register. Any of the crime that happens on those reses doesn't get added to the statistics around there. So all the statistics we've been looking at about education spending, about murder rates, about shootings, all that kind of stuff. Yes, natives can vote, though. I agree. But they're still sovereign in terms of the territorial treaties that we have. They should be separate. Like, and within those, they can, I mean, I would argue, shouldn't they have electors as sovereign land? If the natives themselves can vote, why are the natives part of the state that they're surrounded by? Because they're sovereign land no matter where they be. If this was located in the middle of fucking Illinois, what's the difference? The Republicans would go berserk. Uh-oh, Nevitz Forever is on to me. I mean, how about we propose that? That's not a bad idea. Yeah, and we should have ambassadors, right? They are North Americans, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same laws as the Americans and stuff. I'm just saying it's treaty land. Or, yeah, they're dual citizens technically, right? And we have special circumstances around that as well. I just would like to see a map where it singles this out, that you see this. Texas is bullshitting, by the way, because there's a lot more land around this idea. They just don't, I don't know why they don't put it on this map this way. They have chunks of land like this, but it's also a big empty space, so they just kind of write it off. Yeah. What do you think of, where is it? Ground news. I do my own ground news because I look back and forth. I don't need a secondary source. I see the ads all over the place, but I don't need it. I'd rather hunt my own shit down and compare the knowledge myself from the source as opposed to just the news stories. And I don't care what some other site's opinion is. Also, real quick for our... there's this one thing. Dun-dun-dun-dun. This is for the folks that brought up the Trail of Tears thing. Just let it soak in. Contrary to popular historical narrative, the Union's effort to rein in the Confederacy and end the secessionist military rebellion known as the Civil War was incomplete upon the 1985 surrender of Robert E. Lee. While ending the conflict in Virginia, the legendary courthouse meeting with Lee and Union General Ulysses S. Grant prompted a series of subsequent surrenders in numerous southern states and western territories over the following months. Watty, a staunch Confederate whose loyalty and battlefield exploits had earned him the rank of brigadier general, was of course too complex for our sanitized, more linear national narrative. He was a Native American, a Georgia-born Cherokee who commanded Southern troops in the Indian Territory consisting of battalions of Creek, Seminole, Cherokee, and Osage natives. He was one of many natives who left their southern lands behind 3 decades prior and entered the Oklahoma Territory by way of the Trail of Tears, a series of forced relocations enacted by government authorities. And like a number of his native brethren, Watty was a wealthy planter and landowner who was accompanied on the Western Trail to the Oklahoma Territory by a sizable number of enslaved Africans he owned. You're aware of this, correct? Just letting you know. This is not... They were allowed during the Trail of Tears to bring their black slaves with them. And a good portion of the deaths that occurred on the Trail of Tears were of African slaves who were carrying the goods and were expected to carry the children until they collapsed so that the children didn't have to go as far and that kind of stuff. True Halberts, who sold them? They were traded in amongst the tribe. They were purchased. I mean, is the only person on the hook for the sale of a human being the person who sold them or the person who bought them? I would argue both. We couldn't ignore the fact that the 5 civilized tribes were actually slave states legally, where they did practice slavery. It lasted a few more years after the war, after it was illegal for white stone slaves in the United States. It continued to be legal for natives to have them. But can they vote? No, absolutely not. So, you know, some of them were captured, yes. But the African slaves were, I mean, some of those were captured from the people, like they would kill the farmers or the people in a town, and then they would take the black slaves for themselves in some cases. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, because they moved in the 1830s, but after the yeah, so the Cherokee Constitution, see if I get a copy of it. In, where is this? An article, where's the thing of it? Yeah, here it is. Shall remain the common right of the native, but the improvements thereon. Melody gun to implore his direction accomplished to do ordain, especially the Constitution of the government of the Cherokee Nation and the lands. Here it is. Hold on. Let me bring this up. I gotta squeeze this up and try to find it. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to find the phrase itself. Shrinking this down. Hold on. I'll bring this in here. This is the Cherokee Constitution from 1827. No person shall be eligible to a seat in the general council but a free male citizen. Yeah, okay. No person shall be eligible to a seat in the general council but a free Cherokee male citizen who shall have attained the age of 25 years, the descendants of Cherokee men by all free women except the African race, whose parents may have been living together as man and wife according to the customs and laws of this nation, shall be entitled to all the rights and privileges of this nation, as well as by the posterity of Cherokee women by all free men. No person who is of Negro or mulatto parentage, either by the father or mother's side, shall be eligible to hold any office of profit, honor, or trust under this government. This is the Cherokee, it is the 1827 Cherokee Constitution, which states that you can be a leader as long as you're a male Cherokee citizen, unless one of your parents was black. You could be, one of your parents could be white, one of your parents could be Spanish, I guess, which is white also, but whatever. They could be, I don't know, fucking Vikings, I guess, depending on who came through here. But if they're black, you can't sit on the council. If you're mulatto or you're half black, you can't. According to the Cherokee Constitution that they wrote in 1827. Project 1825, that's exactly right. So also no atheists, by the way. No person who denies the being of God or a future state of rewards and punishment shall hold any office in the civil department of this nation. So no atheists at all. Cherokees will not accept them. So let's see. They did take the same rules of legal precedence. Shall apply twice in jeopardy of the life or limb. Shall be taken and applied to. They had a trial by jury. Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government, the preservation of liberty, and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged by this nation, unless they're black people. But, yeah. But do we believe in bots? No, we do not. White men wrote that? No, they did not. Let's see. Yeah, there were black codes to keep free black populace in place, given that there were free black population living among Cherokees, Choctaws, Cree, and other groups. Yeah. By 1860, there were 4,000 enslaved Africans living in the Cherokee Nation alone. Upon the Civil War in 1861, Waddy joined the Confederacy. Given his common interest in the wealthy slaveholders of the South, his view of the federal government as the Cherokees' primary displacer and enemy, he was pivotal in establishing the first Cherokee regiment of the Confederate Army, known as the Cherokee Mounted Rifles, who fought on behalf of the South. Yeah, give a thumbs up, like the show, because this is very weird. I don't know. Yeah, we don't all agree with you, Hal. That's okay. I have never asked that everyone agree with me. Also, facts shouldn't require any agreement either. They either are or they aren't. You can disagree with the facts or not believe them, but I would humbly request you go study them for yourself in any format that you see fit. That would be okay. And then if you come back to me with something that utterly refutes what I have said, then I'm all ears. Yeah, I can disagree agreeably. This is true. Oh, thanks, Ellen. I appreciate it. Thanks, Ellen. Feel so bad about all the Indians we massacred. Well, not all of them. Some of the other tribes were quite happy that we finally got rid of the people that were causing them a bunch of trouble at the time, and a ton of them integrated into Western society, as it were. What are you saying? Everything we did to the Cherokee Nation was because they were slave owners too? No, not at all. But I'm saying to you, were they that different from the South that they fought on behalf of as a society? If Custer had it coming and General Lee had it coming and the South had it coming for defending slavery, are Native Americans not human in their decisions as a tribe and as people? Honestly, do they get, and again, this goes to that whole point of like, if a tribe had come across the Great Lakes, like the Menominee comes over and they attack the Winnebago, and they come over from across one of the Great Lakes. Let's see if I can get it here. There you go. The Iroquois come over and they attack the Chippewa, and they've come across via the water and through Canadian land, and they come over here and they attack the Chippewa, which they did. What's the difference between them attacking them because they crossed other land and lake water versus salt water over a great distance? What's the difference? Morally, what's the difference? If you canoe from here to here and you find people on this land, you're like, I would like this land, you kill them and you take that land, are you somehow morally less responsible because this land was attached to this land or than you are if you crossed salt water? Is there a difference? Is it okay because you share pigment? And is that why, if it is that why we don't give a shit about Sudan today? Because we perceive them to be the same color. And in the case of Israel-Palestine, for example, we perceive Israelis to be white for some reason and Palestinians to be of color. It's a serious question. So is this equal behavior? Who has the land now? I would argue that people of all nations have this land. There are Chinese people and Greek people and Muslims and Christians. And I mean, America's the most pluralistic land on the planet. Right? It's not one group of people. It's not a white country. Right? Even if it's majority, it's still not that. And show me another country, arguably besides Israel, I guess I would count it in there, that has reservations after the fact. after you won a war against a people, who said, you know what, you can keep this part and we'll live around you. For real. I'm not justifying this, and I'm not, the two wrongs don't make a right, Trucker John, is not my point. My point is that humans are humans. And humans have been being human for a very long time. And there is a tendency in some cases to infantilize or de-anthropomorphize large groups of people because historically, your Mohawk Nation, we weren't the sweetest bunch either. Hey, Karen, you want to tell anybody where the word Mohawk comes from? That's a good one. Also, think about Tecumseh. Okay, Tecumseh was a great Indian warrior who fought on behalf of, quote, his people, which did not include like half of the native tribes. He wanted to take them over, and he was promised that he would control these lands by King George. And so he aligned himself with the British in the War of 1812 because he believed that monarchy was much closer to a chieftain-like government, and democracy was not the way to go. And he had either, believed it or was convinced of it or shared in it or both. But he got his ass kicked because he sided with England in trying to basically use this territory right up here to encircle, basically fight down through this area and encircle the expanding colonies as they pushed west. And his arms and his horses and everything were reinforced by the English. Right? Now, is he innocent because he was here first? Or is he innocent because that was just his system, and he believed that chieftains and monarchs were better than everybody having a say, and that's why he felt he was superior enough to wipe out other tribes in the area, because it wasn't just going to be the whites he killed who were pushing back on this. He wanted the rest of this land from the rest of these tribes. Stop with the big words. Sorry. You're thinking of Quanah Parker? I'm sorry, I just saw that go by. You're thinking of Quanah Parker, the appointed leader of the Comanche? Or who? 10 Bears? 10 Bears, probably 10 Bears. Or like, let's see, I want to show you something. I keep looking for this. Fuck me. I need a, yeah, thanks. Yes, I do need a thesaurus in my head. But I like speaking, in a colloquial tongue. You're not even sure French is a language. Simmer down. Oops. Let's see. So, Geronimo, if many of you know, got his name because when he was killing people, apparently the Spanish were yelling for Saint Jerome. And let's see. And so everybody thought they were calling out his name, like a tribal name, like he was given a name. They thought he was given the name Geronimo by the Spanish as like, this is the man who's killing us, because they would yell out for Saint Jerome. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, LA Times. Yeah, Geronimo was an Apache, but he was like, okay, against I'm gonna try I'm trying to find the quote on him. I was really racist. Saying of teas, journal fled to the night. 700 men, women, gentlemen, refused to give up the freedom. Blah blah blah. Yeah, he surrendered in 1886, and when they asked him, from the trenches to punish no other Indians been, all of them have changed, only served 30 years in prison for war. According to those closest to him, Geronimo was, for the rest of his life, bitterly regretted having surrendered. He wished instead he had stayed in Sierra Madre with his warriors, fighting it out to the last man, because they asked him, what, if you were alive, yeah, he died of old age too, that's right. They asked him, if you were free, what would you do? And if we freed you today, what would you do? And he was like, I would kill Mexicans until the day I died. Like that was like his big quote. I keep like, let's see, 80 reservation. One 300 federal troop marched in, mostly Apache. Where's one? They had to get drawn on after. He's in Arizona when he gave up. Yeah. He goes, once I moved like the wind, now I surrender to you, and that is all. And then he escaped again. But yeah, that was his big phrase. They were like, if we let you go today, what would you do? He said, I will kill Mexicans until the day I die. And a brutal dude, and a warrior for his family. His family was wiped out by, while he was, I want to say, on a hunting party or a raiding party. And when he came back, his whole family had been killed. And so he was like, that's it. And so he just started killing Mexicans. And they used to call, see if I can find this. Yeah. There you go. This is the Comanche. Let's see. There's an article written in the Daily Mail, so take it for what it's worth. But it's it's kind of on the money, because they were writing this thing about how Johnny Depp played a Comanche, a lone Comanche as Tano, right, and wears the crow on his head. So they wrote this article about, like, who the fuck does this guy think he is, kind of article. The 16-year-old girl's once beautiful face was grotesque. She'd been disfigured beyond all recognition in the 18 months she'd been held captive by the Comanche. Now she was being offered back to the Texan authorities by Indian chiefs as part of a peace negotiation. To gas of horror from the watching crowds, the Indians presented her at the council house in the ranching town of San Antonio in 1840, the year Queen Victoria named Prince Albert. Her head, arms, and face were full of bruises and sores, and her nose was actually burnt off to the bone. They tortured her. They sliced her face off. Both nostrils were wide open and denuded of flesh. Once handed over, Matilda Lockhart broke down as she described the horrors she'd endured, the rape, the relentless sexual humiliation, the way the Comanche women had tortured her with fire. It wasn't just her nose. Her thin body was hideously scarred all over with burns. When she mentioned she thought there were 15 other white captives at the Indians' camp, all of them being subject to the similar fate, the Texas lawmakers and officials said they were detaining the Comanche chiefs while they rescued the others. It was a decision that detailed one of the most brutal slaughters in the history of the Wild West and showed just how bloodthirsty the Comanche could be in revenge. The Comanche were from the line of the Shoshone, and the Shoshone were called rattlesnake people by other tribes. Empire of the Summer Moon author wrote about the rise and fall of the Comanche. He says, no tribe in the history of the Spanish, French, Mexican, Texan, and American occupations of the land had ever caused so much havoc and death. No one was even a close second. He refers to the demonic immorality of Comanche attacks on white settlers, the way in which torture, killings, gang rapes were routine. The logic of Comanche raids was straightforward. All the men were killed. Any men who were captured alive were tortured. The captive women were gang raped. Babies were invariably killed. Not that you would know this from the new Lone Ranger movie, which is why they're making the point. But again, fucking whatever. I don't know why they centered in on this. Want to play it in a more sympathetic light. The Comanche were never known to have sympathy, which is true, yeah. Let's see. By the Comanche tribe's furious response knew no bounds. When the Texans suggested they swap the Comanche prisoners for their captives, the Indian tortured every one of the captives to death instead. One by one, the children and young women were pegged out naked beside the campfire. They were skinned, sliced, and horribly mutilated, and finally burned alive by vengeful women determined to wring the last shriek and convulsion from their agonized bodies. Matilda Lockhart's 6-year-old sister was among those unfortunates who died screaming under the High Plains moon. Not only were the Comanches specialists in torture, they were also ferocious and successful warriors known as the Lord of the Plains. They were imperialist and genocidal as the white settlers who eventually vanquished them. Because again, this didn't just happen to white settlers. They did this to everybody. The key to the Comanches' success was that they adapted to the horse more skillfully than the Apache. There were no horses at all in the Americas. Okay, this is all history. We know this. And again, the Comanche were a small, relatively primitive tribe roaming the area that is now Wyoming, Montana, until around 1700 when they migrated southward. First Indians to take up the horse, they had aptitude for this, akin to Genghis Khan's Mongols, and they spread. Okay. They terrorized Mexico, brought around the expansion of the Spanish colonization of America to a halt. They stole horses to ride, cattle to sell, blah, blah, blah. Settlers in Texas were terrified of them. The historian T.F. Fehrenbach, Dr. Hafar. I'm going long. I don't care. This is fascinating to me. History of a People tells a raid on an early settler family called the Parkers, who with other families had set up a stockade known as Fort Parker. In 1836, 100 mounted Comanche warriors appeared outside the fort walls, one of them waving a white flag to trick the Parkers. Benjamin Parker went outside of the gate to parley with them. The people inside the fort saw the riders suddenly surround him and drive their lances into him. Then with loud whoops, mounted warriors dashed for the gate. Silas Parker was cut down before he could bar the entry. Horsemen poured inside. The two Frosts, father and son, died in front of the women. Elder John Parker, his wife Granny, and others tried to flee. The warriors scattered and rode them down. John Parker was pinned to the ground, scalped, his genitals ripped off, and then he was killed. Granny Parker was stripped and fixed to the earth with a lance driven through her flesh. Several warriors raped her while she screamed. Silas Parker's wife Lucy fled through the gate with her 4 small children, but the Comanche took them near the river. They threw her and her 4 children over their horses to take them as captives. Yeah, they were rough. They just fucking... Everybody hated the Comanche. Comanche boys, including captives, were raised to be warriors and had to endure bloody rites of passage. Women often fought alongside the men. They would also stick needles in your penis and all kinds of stuff when they'd catch a man because they would blame them for any of the men that had died anywhere else. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, the Comanche, though hostile to all competing tribes and people they came across, had no sense of race. They would just, yeah, because they would take you in. They would, if they found a boy child, well, let's be clear. If it was a boy, they had no sense of race. You'd become a full-fledged member if they just kicked the shit out of you, and if you were finally like, fuck you, they're like, oh, you're in. Weaker captives were sold to Mexican traders as slaves, so they sold people that they captured as slaves, but more often they were slaughtered because they didn't want to have anybody have, like, somebody who hated them, who could tell what life was like and where they lived and all that kind of stuff, so they considered them spies. One of the great chiefs, Quanah, was the son of a white captive, Cynthia Ann Parker. His father was killed in a raid by Texas Rangers, resulted in her being rescued from the tribe. She never adjusted to life back in civilization and starved herself to death. Yeah. Yeah. And again, these are human beings. And just like just like the Germans pulled shit and the Russians pulled shit and the fucking, the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis, fought, and like in the Houthis versus the Yemenis and that kind of stuff, human beings are equal in their capacity for beauty and depravity. And the quicker we realize that, the more, I think, compassionate we'll be with each other and with how far we have come from that being the norm. Because I don't know about you, but I have no interest in anyone being tortured to death in my name for anything. Right? And that requires that people, let's say like the Russians, not be in charge of a bunch of things because they still like that shit. And we all have the capacity to be awful. So it helps to remember that sometimes and not go, there were some people that were just perfect and we ain't it. You know what I mean? And this was in the 1800s. No, this was forever up until the 1860s, 1870s. All this stuff went on and went on and went on and went on. Oh, Hal, you have an interesting discussion with Patty Vasquez. You'd have an interesting discussion with Patty Vasquez's guest host? Why, is he one of these people who thinks that Native Americans were basically antelope who ate grass and never shit and traded with each other like in under a rainbow or some 70s fucking velvet painting, and so that they weren't basically human? They didn't have the capacity for greed and complacency and laziness and anger and vengeance and that kind of thing, that they were either just like peacefully sitting in a field as a deer until they turned into a lion, and then if you just left them alone, they like turned back into an antelope again. Do you know how embarrassingly dehumanizing that is? Now, the Romans made crucifixion an art form. No, the religion took the crucifix and made an art out of it. Made it a symbol. It is reductive. Yeah, the myth of the noble Indian damages Native Americans as much as anybody else. I paint with too broad a brush. I'm literally trying to add texture in a situation where the brush has been singularly broad. Groove Dragon. Or are you just arguing that that there are racially groups of good humans and racially groups of bad humans, and that if we just got rid of the bad colored ones, we'd be okay? Is that, because that's a fucking scary notion. Because yikes. And again, one of the things, and this would, it behooves you, I believe, Hal Ross, happy little trees. That's right. There are good people in every group. I kind of agree. Every group? You mean every race? Are there only a few, Groove Dragon? Because I'm honestly, I'm trying to work with you, brother. I'm trying to work with you in this one. Because I mean, which of the Nazis were good? I'm sure there were some trying to mitigate the damage and thought it all went way too far and were trying to claw it back some, but I wouldn't necessarily constitute those folks as good. Right? And I also wouldn't be as reductive to say is that there are some good people in every race and the rest of them gotta go. Eesh. Right? Honestly, I'm trying to grasp what you're laying down. I really am. But I don't think I'm painting with too broad a brush. What I'm trying to do is alleviate areas where we have painted with too broad a brush and it has created false equivalences. There's a great Lenny Bruce bit about Jackie Kennedy hauling ass. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's and I doubt I probably could play it and not get a copyright strike, but I think it's important that he makes this case that Jackie Kennedy was not the good woman who stayed. She wasn't trying to get help. She was trying to get out of there because she heard somebody say, "Get out of there," when Jack was shot, and she was crawling across the trunk of the car to get out. And there was this story in Life magazine and other things that was saying she was trying to get help, and he was like, "That's ridiculous. she should try to, I wouldn't want my wife to, in that situation, stick around when I'm clearly dead. She should get the hell out of there and live. And I wouldn't want my daughter in that situation to feel bad if she was ever in a situation and she fled a shooting or something like that, that she would feel like shit because Jackie Onassis stayed, and she should be like the good woman who'd stay because people don't stay. That's his argument in the whole thing, is that yet you're putting his daughter on the hook for a myth, for a behavior that is alleged, that paints this picture of Jackie Kennedy as being greater than she was in this moment. And now his daughter's on the hook for that she'll feel like shit. She'll feel low if she doesn't stick around in a situation like that. And so equalizing the conversation about this and humanizing the circumstance, then you can see true bravery when it happens. Right? Yeah, no shade, that would be terrifying. Exactly. You were speaking about some of the tribes of Native Americans as a group, calling them killers and torturers, like even the women, and then you paint all tribes that brush. I by no means did. I literally made the case that they were this way with other tribes who didn't. I didn't say those folks had it coming. I think I'm fairly certain I was very specific about that they weren't just this way towards white people, the Comanches in particular, that Tecumseh wanted the land of the other tribes, that those groups, by and large, some of them ended up with reservations, some of them did not, because they'd already been wiped out by another tribe. I don't think, for real, chat room, did I not make that clear? Because I thought I was. I thought I was being clear about that. And that I was also explaining that there were tribes that did that in Europe, tribes that did that in the Middle East, tribes that did that in Asia, and that were, equal in their cruelty and common amongst all groups. Some of it is ongoing today. Some of it has ended in other parts of the world today, and we should seek, I would think, over time especially, to end it everywhere if we have the means, the wherewithal, and the idea around that. And I was specifically making the point that in the same case, especially with native tribes, the ones that were around to make treaties with the settlers that were coming through and with the U.S. government were the ones that had won the Indian Wars for decades beforehand. So they had wiped out everybody. They were the militaristic leaders that beat all the other tribes either into submission or out of existence, driven them off that land, claimed the land for themselves, and then they strategically had an army or a group of people or enough warriors where they could negotiate a peace settlement and get themselves some land, whereas the other ones had been destroyed from both ends, right? Some were living in harmony with nature and eating simply. Yeah, but you could say the same thing of Vikings and Norwegians until they came in contact with other people. I would like to know who. Colonizers are the settlers. And again, okay, what's the difference? Also, again, that goes to my point. If I cross a lake, am I a colonizer? If one tribe crosses a lake to take the land from another tribe, are they colonizers? And if we made a deal with them, is that just colonizers making a deal because they beat out some other colonizers? What's the standard? Nuance bonus. Thank you, JD Christie. I'm going to need it tonight because this is an important conversation. This live stream, the subject matter is upsetting me. I'm sorry, Yvonne. It shouldn't be. It should be okay. It should be that humanity is capable of all. Every human has the capacity for greatness and evil inside themselves. And when you come face to face with that, you recognize that that ethics and morals are based on your decision to act on one of those things, not simply on an autopilot that you're on. right? So, yeah. The Utes is what, oh, yeah. Sorry, whoops. The conversation has kicked off. This has really turned into a big conversation. Like, I can always tell when the chat starts to go, then, you know. Nobody was born with the want or need to make other people's lives shit. They developed it over time. I mean, it depends on your concept of self-interest. How desperate will people act if they haven't been cultured to act better? If they haven't been civilized to act better in a situation where their needs outwant the value of someone else. There are trolls on Randy Rhoads' show saying negative things about you. No, that's fine. Why won't they come over here? I'm just, you know what? I'm just proud that there are trolls coming after me. That's that. I mean, honestly, if I, you know, I take it as a point of pride.